you should see a little scale here while we go live. So you'll be, yeah, there you go. Thanks, Kevin. And we're live. Awesome. Well, I'm going to pass the torch over to Rob Zelanka here. You guys are in great hands. Have a fun roundtable.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, guys. First of all, I'm super excited to be here with the three of you. You guys have accomplished a lot and have made it to a certain point that many entrepreneurs just haven't. So I'd love to have you share your knowledge, your tips, best practices, your stories, with the hope that we can inspire some entrepreneurs to take that next big step, that big leap of faith. And hopefully your tips can help them shorten their development time, improve their odds of success. And that's why we're all here. So I'll like to do quick introductions and then dive right into it. My name is Rob Zelanka. I am the co-founder of Partners on Prospect. I also have a startup called Growler Power, which Liz knows a little bit about, I think. That's it. So why don't we go right to Liz, and then Kevin, then Jeff, and we can get started. Liz, you're next.
Okay, hi. So I am co-owner of Cross Culture Kombucha. We are a kombucha brand. Kombucha is a fermented tea. It's a non-alcoholic beverage, in case folks don't know what it is. And we started in 2017, and we've grown. We opened the first tap room in the state, a brewery for kombucha in Connecticut, and we're growing. Now we are in maybe 180 stores and a presence at farmers markets and with our own retail brick and mortar. So yeah, we took it from not having food and hospitality background or manufacturing, I would say, to being out there and being a brand that is getting recognized around the region.
Thanks, Liz. Kevin?
Good afternoon, and pleasure meeting everybody. Kevin Hart, founder and CEO of Green Check Verified. We're a RegTech software company. We incorporated in 2017 and kicked off and launched in New Haven, North Haven. Little transitory activity there. And we have, since our launch, we've filed 3 different patents. We built our product first and did some beta testing in the market. And then in late 2019 into 2020, we started our national sales launch, and we're in over 40 financial institutions, some publicly traded, some as small as credit unions, operating in 30 states with over 650 unique cannabis businesses on platform. Cannabis businesses have a very, very hard time having access to banking systems. You wouldn't think that would be the case if you're a compliant business, but it is true. 80+% of this industry is on or underbanked, meaning they actually just don't have a banking account. So think about trying to run your daily business or your life without access to the banking system, and that's the burden the cannabis industry is under. So we created a web-based app, RegTech platform, that connects the 2 industries together and allows them to work as normal businesses would within the U.S. banking system. Sounds easier than it is, but that's the great thing about technology.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. And Jeff?
Hey, Rob. Good to see you. Hello to the audience. Hey, Liz and Kevin. Nice to meet you. My name is Jeff Matus. I am President and Chief Commercial Officer at Wellings. We are a New Haven-based startup focused on digital health and innovative care solutions for the 25 million people in America living with COPD. What we're looking at is taking existing modalities that are effective in COPD care and bringing them together in an integrated manner. It includes connected devices, software, human coaching services, and really anything the member needs to keep them healthy, happy, and living the best life they can with the chronic condition at home in an outpatient setting where outcomes can be achieved at a lower cost and with higher patient satisfaction and engagement. So it's been a great ride. We're about 20 people right now, up from, last year when we were at this event, I think we're 6 or 7 people. So it's been a heck of a year. I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about how we might be able to apply some of what we've learned along the way to how entrepreneurs are looking to bring their idea to business stage and talk about some of those resources. So thanks for having me. Super excited to be here and look forward to the discussion.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. So we'll get right to it. Liz, I'd like to start with you and ask you a question about how you took the beverage you were producing. Let's go back a few years. I'm assuming, I could be wrongly assuming, but I assume it started as sort of a hobby, became a passion, and turned it into a business, and then you've went ahead and actually became a successful business, and now you recently expanded. So walk us through, I guess, if that is the case, how you left the hobby world and turned it into a successful business, and sort of how did you do that? Walk us through like the steps you took, and what did you learn along the way, and what would you have done differently through that process that you would tell other brewers who are thinking about doing the same thing?
So it was my husband's hobby. He took over the kitchen with kombucha and went way overboard right away. And then it had to go to the basement for a little bit because it's got a smell. So you know what? I actually was a project manager in commercial real estate, and I was out of a job when I was a part of a really small team, and one of our clients hired my boss, and they only had room for one. So I was looking for a job, and his obsession with kombucha was growing. And we looked around, and there was no kombucha like on tap anywhere in Connecticut that we could find, and definitely not Danbury where we are. And there wasn't even like a local brand. Everything was from the West Coast, and we knew we could like make it good. Not that we could, not that we knew all that we. And so I know my husband had said to me, you know what, don't hurry to find a job, because I've always worked. I always worked a lot, even after the kids, and with, like all of, that's who I am. I get really into it. So I was, he's like, take your time, find something you really want to do. And these kind of ideas came together. Him, like both of us realizing this is not something that's around here, and me looking for something and wondering. And then he's like, why don't we try this? And we did. So what we started out doing, and what really like brought it to that next step, is just going, and it was a lot of research. So, but also talking to people. So it was like calling the state and seeing what's required, even finding out if you're allowed to make something in your home and sell it, which there is a cottage industry for some foods, but not for mine, but yes, that exists for other businesses. And then what, if we want to do this, then what do we need to do, and where would that be? What does that look like? Because there wasn't a model to go visit and try to figure out. So we did reach out to other brewers in other states and try to make those connections to learn, which isn't always easy. Not everyone's like open to that. But it was a ton of conversations. It was talking to the state and the city, who didn't know what kombucha was, hadn't dealt with a fermented beverage like this. They, it's like you're trying to say it's like beer, but it's not beer. That's not going to be a good enough description, right? So it was a lot of just digging into the details, learning from our own, trying to learn from the industry before you're really selling about how to communicate. And that was the tough part, just articulating, hey, this is the idea and the concept. Even just trying to find your code for the insurance companies, when you're making your LLC, when you're doing the steps to form the business and doing all those business things, right? Those like, what do I have to do to get insurance? What do I have to do to get, to make this landlord understand, whatever it is. Even the industry code is something that was like, there's nothing like this. What am I? So all these things just took longer than, I would think. I think as soon as I was able to do the LLC without, like, it was right in January, right when I knew I wouldn't have to pay it another time, right? Because it's yearly. Like, let me get this going and start laying down all the foundation, right? All those first steps. But it took quite some time of trying to explain what it is. Even now, I find myself falling over my words of what it is, right? To folks who are just totally unaware of it. And then from there, it was like, okay, well, we need a commercial kitchen. We need this kind of space that's going to be approved by a health inspector. And we found, and through our own network and creativity, we were able to find a really amazing first step in, which was a shared access kitchen in the back room of an office building cafe, which wasn't being used nights and weekends. So we came in there nights and weekends. We got our stuff in this tiny space. It was like 10 by 12, not even. Had a few tanks going. And tomorrow is my anniversary of, I realized it's the 4-year anniversary of our first approved inspection of when we had the state come out and said, okay, you got this, after we set up the processes. But I will say that we probably had 20 conversations with the state inspector before that, a lot of emails back and forth. And we even asked her, would you come see a couple spaces with us before we even like took that space and just made that commitment? Because we wanted to make sure, it's like once you get into a spot and you make, right, once you do something, I'm making more hurdles for myself because there's all these authorities that have to say, okay, before I could sell this. So it was a lot of teeing things up, I will say that, just to get to that first point. And then, and then comes the hard part, right?
That's great. So you said networking and creativity kind of led you down the path that you were on. And without any food and beverage experience, I think you said in your introduction, that's quite amazing. You're kind of charting a path that wasn't paved for you. You're kind of figuring it out and you're being kind of a pioneer in that sense. So what would you say to an entrepreneur who's looking to do what you did, more or less? Not that I want to encourage competition, but competition is also good.
Well,
yeah.
Sorry, with anything, I think, so I know what I don't know, right? Like I knew that, hey, there's a lot that I don't know, but there's also a whole lot that I do know. So, and there's a whole lot my husband knows, right? Like together, and then our network of people, right? You can't discredit any of that. So I worked for a startup in the past. I had done everything from payroll and hiring and train. Like I had project management and permitting and all these different things. And I'm like, well, I've navigated these paths before for a different industry possibly, but that doesn't mean I can't replicate it somewhere else, right? So I knew that I had that. My husband's got commercial real estate, a very deep knowledge of commercial real estate and experience there because that's the industry he's in. So, you can tap into the knowledge that we have of the buildings and the landlord, all the moving pieces that are happening around us. So that's what we used. I knew that I'd done it before, really, is what it came down to. So it's like, hey, especially with the authorities, there's a lot that we don't know, but we have to get the approval, right, of these folks. And I knew from my past experience I had worked in the solar business, approval on that you just have to talk to them and get them on board, right, to what you're doing, and you can see it through. It's just early stage. So we did that. I mean, that's the creativity, and that's kind of like what you got to go for is. Maybe I don't know a ton about, some things with food, but can I learn it? Oh, sure. Yeah, I could get my certifications that I need to get, and I can get that knowledge in place. But in the meantime, I'm still going to use what I have, right? So I was able to do that.
It certainly worked out for you. So congratulations on where you are right now. It's pretty exciting to watch. Kevin, I'll go right to you next. So you mentioned that you kind of started this business, and I know you've done this before, so this is not your first time. You did this kind of sort of half, at least during the pandemic, right? So you had some challenges there, I'm sure. I'm sure you had challenges in convincing investors to come along for the ride into the cannabis world, and that could have been probably a challenge too, to try to convince them that this is, there's certainly a lot of risks regulatory-wise, and a lot of people that didn't know a lot about it. So I guess how to get the funding, I'm going to jump from where we were with Liz and getting the business off the ground to finding funding for something like what you did. How did you accomplish that? Walk us through that story and how ultimately you were successful.
So it was more complicated than other lines of business that I've done previously, much more so than I initially anticipated. So, it kind of goes back to just because you have a great idea, does the market think you have a great idea? And, how do you validate that? So, that's a piece of advice for everybody. Don't drink your own Kool-Aid, or in this instance, don't try to count money to go into a bank before you actually have access to it. So because we work exclusively with the financial systems, so our commercial accounts are the banks and the credit unions. We make our platform 100% free to the cannabis businesses. They have enough work and friction to actually have access to banking and business services. So we took a different approach. We are a RegTech company, so I focused our fundraising efforts more on people that would back an early RegTech or FinTech. But we had the same challenge of raising money as we did of selling the product at the same time. Marijuana is federally illegal. I'm going to wait for the Safe Banking Act. Oh, when Safe Banking Act comes, you go out of business, et cetera. So there was much more education in terms of telling the story and getting people to understand what the financial opportunity was than there was about interest of, well, what exactly do you guys do and how are you going to make money? It was a much larger hill to climb to be able to go through that education cycle of all of those somewhat real, but more perceived obstacles that were out there. And so significant amount of education. And, in the typical fundraising world where, you ask 100 people for money and, maybe you get 2 to 3 to say yes, this was more like, you better be prepared to go talk to 250 and maybe one will say yes. It was crazy. But one of the things that we had working for us was because we did not spend any time building the solution until we had defined the market, we were able to provide a lot more data to possible investors as to what the real opportunity was and vetted approaches to the how we were approaching the market. And what I mean by that is we had gotten folks from both areas, if you will, both sides of the industry. On the financial side, we dealt with senior examiners from the Federal Reserve, from the alphabet soup that's involved with banking, right? The FDIC, OCC, CSBS, state banking associations. We talked to all those people, but then we also were able to hire people who actually wrote cannabis programs for states. And so we were able to marry the knowledge level together. So I would say from a subject matter expertise level, we are recognized as one of the premier firms nationwide in that space. And that's not boastful, it's just factual based upon how many people come to us for webinars and what we do. But it was an absolute challenge to find the right investors. And so ultimately what happened is we've done 4 rounds of financing, no equity rounds yet, all debt and convertible note financing. And part of the reason is because our valuation continues to grow and grow and grow. And why go through a dilutive round if you don't need to? So we've done convertible notes and they've had caps and conversion rates. So yes, somewhat dilutive, but not as much as taking early equity. So our Series A will occur at the end of 2021 or more towards the beginning of 2022. But that at that point in time, based upon our trajectory, we're also not only going to have a significant revenue stream, but we'll actually be profitable and we'll be cash flow positive, which really changes the dynamics. Does it put us in the driver's seat on valuation? No, but it gives us a much more defensible position to be able to do it that way. So it's been fun, and we found some great folks to back us. Very well known and very well connected names in the U.S. banking system, global banking system, because we took the approach of we will only work within the banking system, never around it, and that's always been one of the fears, for financial institutions. how do we know that we're going to be in compliance? They're putting their reputational risk out there, by entering this industry.
It's impressive how both you and Liz have leveraged your backgrounds to get you to where you are. And I do want to talk about this a little later, but Kevin, you also assembled a great team. I went on your website and you have experts in a variety of different areas that's supporting your business right now, supporting your growth. So it's pretty impressive, the team you've assembled. So I'd love to hear that story. And this is going to be a question for all of you afterward is, how did you assemble your team? Because ultimately it takes a team to do what you guys are doing. It's more than one person can handle. So we'll get back to that in a little bit, but very impressive, Kevin, on what you've done so far. Jeff, so let me ask you, let's go backwards a little bit. Let's say I'm a college student and I've invented this or come up with this idea that's a new medical device or medical solution or digital medical solution. I've created a program, I've coded. I guess what do I do next? What steps should that student take that you've learned in your process of creating your company? What should that person do next and do now in order to be successful, shorten their product development time, ensure their chances of success? What would you recommend? Take us through that, Jeff, a little bit.
Yeah, it's almost like you're in my head here, Rob. I wanted to find a way to tailor my response to something that's really important to all of us, and that is the amount of resources that we have here in the state of Connecticut. And no matter what you asked me, I was going to find a way to bend it back in that direction. So you asked me a question that actually lends perfectly to that direction. So thanks. Look, I think if you're coming out of one of the state's universities or a private university or college here in the state of Connecticut, you have a tremendous amount of resources in your backyard that are available for the taking. So my advice would be figure out how to navigate that ecosystem of resources and people who are there to help you. So spend some time figuring out how you can leverage what's already there to your benefit. Right? Because as Kevin mentioned, when you go out and raise financing, all of the financing that you're going to raise is going to be tied towards maturity of the company and milestones that you've been able to hit. And if you can do that on free advice, pilot programs, non-dilutive resources, you're going to be that much further along. So economically, that's really important for you. But for your end user, you're also learning along that entire journey how to make a better product for them and how to connect with them in a way that's meaningful. So a lot of times as thinkers and visionaries and creators, we come up with really good ideas to solve problems. Before we go check in that problem really is a problem for the user and that it can be solved the way that we're thinking about solving it. So I want you to flip that around and hug your customers, ask them first or you might get doxxed, but get out there with the customers and be close with them. Do that through some of these resources that we have here in the state of Connecticut. And then find a way to do things intentionally that don't scale in those programs and worry about scaling them later. I think another thing that Kevin said, and Liz said both, I mean, early on building these businesses, you're doing things that can't become a business at maturity, right, at some point, but then you can alter them so that they can. And I think that both looking at that and thinking about how you can do that in a meaningful way is an important part of the journey. I'm going to put a link here. So I told you I was kind of prepared. I'm going to put a link here. I put a Google sheet together of like the top few resources that I could think of. So if anyone in the audience that wants to take a look, please add to it so you can edit it. You can add the name of organizations like Connecticut Entrepreneur Awards, like Partners on Prospect and others, and contact points so you can figure out how you can get around this ecosystem. I find that everyone out there is really willing to help and connect people to things that can be of value to them. And I'm going to use 5 seconds to lobby really quickly. Tomorrow, the state Senate is hearing, the Senate Finance, Revenue, and Bond Committee is hearing a bill that means a lot to all of us in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And it's the funding for CT Next and the Innovation Places programs that we all benefit from. So it would be wonderful if all the entrepreneurs in the audience could talk to their state lawmakers and representatives and make sure that they're aware that you as an entrepreneur are in support of the state funding those programs and making sure that entrepreneurs have access to the things that they need to grow in the state. So that's it. That's my answer. I hope it's helpful.
I think it is, Jeff, and I've heard from other startups who are in Connecticut who just moved to Connecticut and are starting a business or been here a little while. I'm surprised that they don't know about CT Next and all the resources and just how much effort they put into compiling everything into one very easy to understand resource that is a CT Next website. So thanks for sharing that and bringing that to everyone's attention, Jeff. We'll come back around to you, Jeff, in just a bit, but I'd like to, Liz, ask you a question about teams, forming teams, pulling together the right partners. What was your process? Because before it was just you and your husband, right? And look where you are now, right? Look how far you've come. So I'm sure it didn't just fall on the backs of you two. You figured out how to pull in people and I'm sure build a team to some degree. So how did you go about that? Walk us through that process.
We're still a small team, so there's a couple of full-time folks besides me, and then some part-timers. But honestly, we were reaching out a lot for help from somebody who understood a lot about the brewing equipment, and he was unhappy at his job, and we gave him the opportunity, and he's our head brewer now. So that was it's just taking the opportunity where we saw it, and when you click with somebody. And then it was really through people that we knew that we were able to find some other really great key people, because then you find they're hardworking, they're genuine, the things that you want, in your organization. Because in the very, I think with any early organization, that core first team is going to help shape that culture, right? So you want, those great attitudes there, people who are willing to dig in with you and wear multiple hats. That's kind of, now we're starting to get away from that and focus more on the individual, specific of what their tasks are, rather than being like, everyone does everything. So we started to get away from that now, finally. So yeah, I was just taking that opportunity. It's still a small team, but yeah, I'm thinking a lot about how we grow it.
Absolutely, yes. So Kevin, want to walk us through your ability to assemble a team and the company you've created, and again, I go back to your website, just looking at all the leaders in their various areas. It's so impressive. So that was a big part of how you were successful, right? You brought in people who are knowledgeable about the cannabis industry, and you leveraged that to ultimately get to where you are. So why don't you walk us through that evolution?
Sure. Yeah, no, we would not be anywhere near where we are if I wasn't able to find, the great team that we have here. I'd be back still doodling on napkins and whiteboards, trying to figure out how to make this actually work. And I've grown companies before, through large scale from startup in the past. But again, raising money for this is different because a company like Green Check never existed before. Nobody's trying to connect the cannabis industry to the banking industry at the same time. And just those two names give you a different connotation, right, of who works in the banking industry and who works in the cannabis industry. And so you're not only trying to connect those knowledge bases, but you're trying to connect those different personality sets as well. So I try to approach every session, and especially, this was an idea, making sure I'm the dumbest person in the room all the time, and I'm comfortable wearing that hat or shirt, just asking a lot of questions, getting the best ideas out of people. I mean, I know what we're trying to do, and I have a good sense of how we need to get there, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be the best person to design the product. I'm never going to fully understand the cannabis regulations. I've never worked in a bank, so I didn't sit in that chair. We had to find people who did that. So it was finding those people and finding, as Liz pointed out, those common threads of personalities and people that were willing to, believe in what this opportunity could be. Because, we pay well, but some of these people joined this company at a change in salary, and it wasn't a change for the increase. It was to go down and believe in the opportunity and the equity. So everybody who joins the company becomes a shareholder. I'm a big believer in shared success. If we fail, that's on me. It won't be on them. But so hopefully we'll continue to be successful. I love just diverse workforce. It's not a cliche for us. We really try to embrace it because I think it brings out the best in everybody, and it brings out the best in terms of the ideas. So we work hard to do that. And most importantly, we just spend a lot of time together, even in a virtual environment. We do, and that's also part of our hiring process. So we've hired 3 people in the last 5 weeks, and I'll probably be hiring another 6 before the end of this quarter. At least that's my goal. If we could find the right people who are interested in joining the team. So we all have a good time. It's life-work balance. I think that's an important thing. We're a startup, but high growth. We work hard, but it's life-work balance. Life is the first word, so make sure that we do that. And working remotely actually has been positive for us. Engineers, by and large, have gotten quite used to this, and half our company are engineers. So they like being able to work that way. Early on, we were trying to get everybody to be in the office. Sorry, Connecticut, but a lot of our recent hires have not been in Connecticut just because, this is just where we're finding some of the talent. So, we're trying hard in Connecticut. We have some great internship programs that we run with Southern Connecticut specifically. We've had some great successes there, interns to hires, et cetera, and we'll continue to do that. But the people are out there. You have to sell them as much as why they would want to join you versus why they're trying to sell you to be able to come on board. You can find those people who want a career and want to do something new and exciting and different. And it's up to us as entrepreneurs to always be able to provide that for somebody.
No, thanks for that, Kevin. And Jeff, talking about building teams, you went from 6 to 7 about a year ago to close to 20 or more. So tell us, walk us through that evolution, and certainly talk about, why you were so successful, how you're successful in recruiting the team just in a short period of time.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. And it's probably just going to be said in a different voice on the same themes that Liz and Kevin are speaking on. I think the points that were made are perfect. In our situation, we had an evolution of the business, what we commonly call a pivot. And we were going from one focus on medical devices into another focus on building this holistic and integrated COPD solution. So it just takes a different team. So we went in both directions. We brought the team down and we built the team back up. And that's sometimes what you got to do. So for us to do that, we had to have a really clear vision of the impact that we can have on the world and the value we can create. And that's really what I recruit on is, if you want to be part of building something that can literally change the way that chronic obstructive pulmonary disease is managed and potentially positively impact the lives of 25 million people living with that condition, we've got a role for you, right? Certainly along the way, there's going to be finance jobs, there's going to be software roles, there's going to be sales and business development, there's going to be G&A and HR and all this other stuff. But we'll probably have a role for you if that fits what you like to do. So I believe in long lead relationship development that turns into recruiting. I like to manage a big network and make sure that I'm providing two-way value. So I spend an awful lot of time mentoring others, coaching others, helping figure out how I can aid and assist somebody else in their journey, because maybe they'll be on my team. Or someday they're going to grab one of their friends that is looking for a new role and say, hey, you should really go check out what the Wellings team is working on, because I like their brand, I like what they're selling. So that for us has been really successful. I think I mentioned last year on this call that recruiting for me is actually terrifying. I think recruiting people into a startup is a scary thing. Every time someone signs an offer letter and leaves their job, if you are leading that company and you're sleeping easily that night, good for you, right? But I never do. I always say, man, someone's leaving this great career that they've worked so hard to build, and they're going to come bet everything on us. And I take that responsibility really seriously. So I think my team can feel that, and they know that I'm looking out for them. I trust that they're looking out for each other, and eventually we all start building in the same direction. But the responsibility of having somebody bet their livelihood, their family on us and what we're doing is something that's incredibly personal to me, and I actually wish I could kind of get past some of those anxieties associated with it. But that being said, the company is now getting to a stage where the flywheel is moving. We're heading in a beautiful direction, and recruiting is maybe getting a little bit easier. But I'll always remember those moments when you were hiring someone in that was going to be the difference maker as to whether or not everyone else was going to be successful, and that was a fun part of the journey. So, thanks for the question.
That's great. Now, we have 5 minutes left technically. So what I'd like to do is, I know I limited the discussion to teams, and we talked about fundraising, we talked about pivoting, and a number of different things. So I'd like to ask a general question. I think it was Bill that asked it. I'd like to go back to that. So what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started your company? So you have about 1 minute to 2 minutes on that question. Maybe Liz, if you can just offer that up to the audience, that'd be great, and then we'll go right around.
Well, this might seem very obvious, but it would have been really nice in January, February to be totally prepared for what was about to happen because our business changed so much in how we serve our customers, and food service went away, and all these changes in our business and how we had to sell our product and produce our product. Or how much to produce, I should say. So yeah, I wish I knew that. A little lighthearted, the ball there.
Kevin?
Cannabis has been a pandemic-proof industry, so it was deemed essential even in the state of Connecticut, and because folks were home, et cetera, sales actually increased. So however, how we were hiring and how we were able to attract our commercial clients really changed. We could not get in front of them. We could not be face-to-face. So we really had to modify our sales approach and how we engage with these customers, especially their board members, because we could not participate in face-to-face meetings with them. And so I think the creativity of, again, back to education, what people need to understand, what they need to do to be able to make decisions on complex business processes. I'm really impressed with the creativity of what the team was able to come up with, even in this diverse and, separated workforce. So that was, I wish I knew, like Liz said, and like, Jeff, that the ups and downs of what that was going to be like, but the ability for a team to adapt through all this was very impressive.
Thanks, Kevin. And Jeff?
Yeah, so I always like to disclose that I did not start the company, so I'm going to tweak the question a little bit. But if I had known when I became an entrepreneur and moved into this entrepreneurial environment, how much fun it was going to be and the relationships that I would create and the journey along the way, I probably would have done it 5 years earlier. So I'm thankful for the career that I had before I came into companies of this profile. But man, there's some FOMO of those days that I spent just kind of nose to the grindstone working on someone else's project when we could have been doing this. So can't get that time back, but thankful for all experiences.
Great. Liz, any closing thoughts? Anything you want to share with the audience before we adjourn?
I don't have anything, but I will show, if I'm allowed to promote in the tiniest way, I'll just show you what my product at stores looks like. There you go.
Which is very delicious, by the way. There you go, Liz. Kevin, any closing thoughts, remarks?
Just a quick one. Thanks to Bill and his entire team, you, Rob, for moderating this, but really, a big shout out to Bill for pulling this together every year. It is impressive. It keeps getting better. It's a privilege for us to be part of this. So win or lose, there are no losers. I know that's cliche, but just to see what folks like he and everybody else are trying to do in Connecticut, keep it going. Thanks,
Kevin. And Jeff, any final words?
I'm going to echo that thankfulness to Bill and to you, Rob. I think it's terrific. I look forward to this, every year. And I'm going to leave the entrepreneurs with a thought that if you're wondering if you can be successful in something you're thinking about doing, just do it. You got a lot of support around you, and I think you got a great community here that's ready to back you up. and hold us to that, right? So reach out and create relationships and remind us that we were in the position once. I asked the question of the swimming stages. We were on the deck of that pool thinking about jumping in before too. Jump in, we'll throw you life preserver if you need it, but I think you're going to swim just fine.
Absolutely.
Liz, Kevin, and Jeff, thank you for enlightening us and inspiring all of us. We appreciate it. Congrats.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.